Hey everybody, my name is Circus and welcome to part 3 of my intermediate/beginner's guide to Hunt Showdown. In this video, we're going to talk about playing with a team, spawns, reading the map, and the early parts of a match in Hunt. In part 1, we talked about setting up our hunters, and in part 2, we talked about aiming, movement, and positioning. That's all going to be applicable here, and I'm going to reference some points from those videos. So if you haven't checked out part 1 and part 2, I'd recommend you do. They're on screen now. And I just want to give a quick thanks for watching these videos. I appreciate all the comments and I truly hope that these are helping you. But on to business, let's talk about loadouts super quickly. When we play with other people, we want to bring choke bombs. As of the latest update, the amount of ways to set a downed hunter on fire have drastically increased. The hand crossbow with firebolts, fusees, Dragon's Breath, and the flare pistol can all light downed hunters on fire now. Choke bombs are more important than ever, and it's a good idea to have every single team member running them unless they have a good reason not to. In duos, it can be beneficial to sync loadouts with your partner. If they're taking close range, it might be a good idea to do so as well, or to have some good alternative to help push, like a pistol with fanning. Likewise, if your partner is bringing something with some range, like a Martini Henry, you probably want to have one of your weapons capable of fighting at least at mid-range. You really want to be able to back each other up at the ranges that you choose to fight at. When you get a pick in duos, pressing your 2-on-1 advantage can be an easy cleanup. 2 hunters are exponentially more dangerous than 1 if they're coordinated, so it's important to push together. Games of duos also typically contain more solos, and teams will be much quieter. It's very easy to walk into 2 teams and accidentally start a 3-way fight. So you want to stick close to your partner and be ready to support them. In trios, there's no need to necessarily match the loadouts of your partners in terms of weapon range and function. One player taking a slate while the other 2 have rifles, or one taking a Mosin while the other 2 have shotguns, can be very effective. In fact, I would argue that loadouts like 3 Romeros or 3 of any one weapon can be sort of weak in trios, but it does depend on the weapon. Having some diversity, even if it's just a single shotgun to deter a push, or a Winfield to put some bullets down range at a distance or as a distraction, is really useful. Covering fire actually works a little bit in Hunt, so spamming bullets towards people can often be the difference between a successful rotation or a successful necro. Taking stock of the rate of fire of your team's weapons and bringing in a weapon that fills that gap, such as a Winfield in between 2 sparks, can be a good idea if you don't know what else to bring. In part 1, I mentioned that certain weapons like the crossbow and the hunting bow can bring in a lot of utility. Consider that these weapons benefit the entire team and not just the player using it. The crossbow is truly one of the best weapons in the entire game. The same applies to tools like throwing axes. One hunter with throwing axes can help the whole team move faster. When it comes to hunter health bars, remember that you can respec your hunter's health bar layout. We have 150 HP in increments of small bars of 25 HP or big bars at 50 HP. Having a big bar in front is ideal if you're careful and don't die a lot, but having a smaller bar can be better if you're having a bad day, playing solo, or even if you're just on the more aggressive side. The trade-off in health bar setup is equalized by long ammo and some medium ammo weapons. A lot of weapons will one-shot you to the chest if you're missing 50 HP, or cause so much bleed damage that you're left with barely any health. Health bars go beyond this though. You and your teammates are the sum of your health bars. That's how many chances you get, and worst case, it's how many opportunities the enemy will get given their health bar setup. Don't waste your bars with blind necros, don't stab the immolator, and don't die to AI. It's obviously impossible to know your enemy's health bar layout, but it isn't really important. What is important to recognize is that in these long fights with revives and necros, that you are whittling them down. This is especially true when you play solo. A Banish restores all health bars, but so do event traits like Remedy, Rampage, and Final Gasp. This can drastically change the momentum of a fight if you're not keeping an eye on it. When fighting a team, just take note of the nearby supply wagons and obviously any sort of boss Banish. So if a supply wagon is nearby and the shooting suddenly stops, you probably know where they're headed. Also consider that instead of directly third-partying a fight, you can catch the victors at a nearby supply wagon afterwards. So let's clarify one thing that's very important. The less teammates you have, the easier it is to go unnoticed while moving quickly. This is the true advantage of playing solo, and we'll get more into that later. Hunt really isn't a stealth game, it's a mobility game. Yes, scaring crows, which are technically ravens in the game by the way, is bad, and yes, we want to keep our noise levels down. But you really can't hide in Hunt for very long. Players are going to find you once they start looking. You can use your mobility to lose people, and you can slip in and out of places, and you can sneak up on people, but rarely can you just disappear into the woods unless you already have some distance between you and your opponent. It is almost always better to rotate to a new spot entirely, rather than hide in the current vicinity if you are looking to clutch a situation. Hunt gives you access to a lot of stamina buffs, and they make it very easy to run people down. If you think hiding can help isolate a situation to present you with a 1v1, then it can be the play, but typically, movement is king. If you want a gameplay tip that summarizes this concept in Hunt, spend less time crouch walking and more time just walking. Crouch walking is audible at close distance, so if they're going to hear you anyway, you may as well move quickly. When it comes to the early game and spawns, the ideal goal is to be fast and quiet, but often simply being quick is more important. At the start of the game, triggering noise traps isn't the end of the world. You're going to be moving on from that location anyway, just be wary of potential ambushes. But for every clue that the game progresses, that is when teams are on their first or second or third clue, triggering ducks or crows can bring the whole server onto you. One of the main reasons that we focus on mobility is that it's safer. Teams spawn on the edges of the playable area, near the roads that lead out of the map. Your first objective in any game of Hunt is to check and listen for nearby teams that have spawned. Using audio cues as well as basic insight can help you predict the movement of enemy teams. Bridges and water crossings can be natural choke points to set up an ambush. Certain spawns can potentially be more dangerous than others, such as King Snake Mine on DeSalle or Devant Ranch on Stillwater Bayou. Typically, the corners of maps can easily have multiple teams spawn at them. Another gnarly spawn is Blanchett Graves. When you spawn next to another team, the best thing you can do to gain an advantage is to take control of the nearby compound. Early in the game, you can absolutely take a direct line to compounds. When teams are on their first or their second clue, moving into the map is relatively safe. As a rule of thumb, moving around on double bounty maps tends to be safer than moving on single bounty maps. Rotjaw and roaming bosses not included. There's some RNG here, and it depends on what the other teams are doing, but moving quickly is typically advantageous. It also helps us be the first to a boss lair, or it allows us to rotate and position ourselves better. So it's important to look at the map and read it, not just in the context of your team, but in terms of the entire game. For example, here I am as a solo versus trios. I spawned at Catfish and I took the first clue, which was for the big bounty, who is Scrapbeak. Now there's a lot of options on a double bounty map with this clue setup. I think the best play here would probably be to go up to Healing Waters and get the clue there, with the intention of going to Lock Bay afterwards, depending on where the smaller bounty is. If I go to Healing, I need to be careful of a team that might have spawned at Slaughterhouse. Any southern spawn here can be going to Healing Waters for their second clue, so if I see anyone, they will likely be to my left. But if a team spawned at Devant, they might check Slaughterhouse first because it's close to an extraction. That could also be a good play for me, because if the bounty is there, it's an easy extract. But if the bounty is not there, then I am very far behind. But back to me moving up to Healing, it's possible that the Stillwater team can also go up there, but given the cut of the map, Alice might be more likely for them. If I instead go to Alice, I need to be careful of teams coming in from Chapel and Stillwater, and potentially Port Reeker. But one of the advantages of moving into Alice in this scenario is that I will likely be behind anyone else going there. And likewise, an advantage of moving to Healing Waters is that I have the safest route there from the Devant or Slaughterhouse teams. Knowing the maps well enough to know what terrain is where can really up your game. For instance, the run up to the south side of Healing Waters is very open and very exposed. After you get your first clue, it's relatively unlikely that the boss will be in a compound touching the grayed out area. In this particular game, Scrapbeak spawned at Reynard. It's also unlikely that the boss will spawn in areas like this. So that is going to do it for part 3. Originally, this video was going to go into gameplay specifics for duos, trios, and solos, but the video was getting too long, so I'm going to talk about that in part 4. In the meantime, I want to extend my thanks to everyone for all the kind words and support once again. If you like the content and/or it's helped you, please like the video and hit the subscribe button. My cat wanted to be involved in recording this, so here's his contribution to the video. And as always, good luck in the bayou.